My colleague Deputy Howland and Deputy Naughton before him articulated the case against the government's proposition extremely well, and I support the objective. Deputy Howland and I spoke at length in our second stage contributions about the impact that this particular proposition from government, the changes that are planned to be made in terms of the treatment of UK citizens and the intention to increase the threshold, the impact that will have on a very important subset of the retail sector that has been absolutely crucified as a result of this pandemic and the required public health initiatives that were needed to address all of the associated problems. It's ironic that this state has spent countless billions of euros supporting a sector that is on its knees as a result of COVID-19 to help it through this unprecedentedly difficult time, to allow the doors to be kept open, but now to, in effect, turn the gun on that sector, after all of the efforts that have been made to ensure that those shops, that subsector of retail, could remain viable until such time as the threat of the pandemic recedes and they can return to profitability. If we proceed with the government's proposition, this will have a catastrophic effect on the sector that Deputy Howland has identified. Those who are selling souvenirs, small companies, independent businesses, often family-run, in some cases passed on from one generation to the next, they will be no more. That is the truth. And I find it curious in the extreme that an attempt has been made to essentially amend our finance legislation, our tax legislation, in the context of a Brexit bill. It seems to me that this is some kind of a pet project for an official in the Department of Finance or an official in Revenue who decided that this represents an opportunity to shoehorn in this particular initiative without any real due diligence, as we have identified and as we referred to, no pre-legislative scrutiny and no impact assessment worth the name. That is a huge injustice to the retailers who are going to be negatively impacted by this proposition. I read through very diligently the tax strategy group papers, for example, that were presented before our consideration of the budget. I couldn't identify any initiative from Revenue or anybody else proposing to make the kinds of changes that are proposed here, increasing the threshold to qualify for the RES2 from €0 to €175, as was indicated in the initial bill when it was published, and now down to €75 based on the Minister's amendment. This is not the place and not the time to be introducing measures like this when this sector is absolutely on its knees and needs our support. It's reckless, it is very ill-conceived and extremely poorly timed. And there is no objective evidence for it. None that has been presented to us. Most of us, I would hope, in this House, believe in evidence-based policy making. And it is difficult to make the case to support a proposition like this from government without any evidence whatsoever. But we know the evidence from those on the ground, that this will have an extraordinarily negative impact on their businesses and on employment levels in the sector and in terms of sustaining those businesses that, as I said, are absolutely on their knees. There's actually an acknowledgement by government that the original proposition was, to put it charitably, imperfect. And a concession of sorts was made in reducing the 175 figure to the figure of €75. But that misunderstands the issue and misunderstands the concerns of the sector. Splitting the difference actually won't make any difference at all. It is entirely pointless and really is a tokenistic concession to give the pretence that there was some movement in the direction of what this particular sector requires. I would ask, in the spirit of the consensus that Deputy Howlin has referenced, the general unanimity that we have had in this House in terms of our national approach to the existential challenge that is Brexit, to dispose with your proposition, to accept the amendment from Deputy Howlin and I and others, and to reflect again on the proposal around the treatment of UK citizens in terms of the application of this particular section. That has been, as Deputy Howlin referenced, that can be dealt with, that is dealt with. And as I said in my second stage contribution, if you are determined to do that, then let's review it. Let's keep this under review to look very closely and examine very closely at the impact of the second part of this proposition. Because we do, I hope all of us, believe in the notion of evidence-based policy making. This is poor policy, shoehorned into an inappropriate bill in a very badly timed and ill-conceived way, and I would appeal to government to drop it and to accept this amendment.